I took time off work to help my neighbor move her mother into assisted living. A month later, she told the HOA I was running a moving business from my garage. "You looked like you needed something to do," she said. I didn't respond. I just opened a file I'd been holding onto for 6 years. I'm Scott. I'm 52, living in Charleston, South Carolina. I used to work in IT digital forensics. After my wife passed away, I stopped chasing promotions and started working remote jobs only when I felt like it. I still do some consulting now and then. Nothing big. Mostly quiet stuff. I bought a house on a calm cul-de-sac in one of those neighborhoods where everything looks like a model home. It's the kind of place where people act friendly on the outside but keep to themselves. That suited me just fine. I didn't want people in my business, and I didn't plan on getting in theirs. For the most part, it worked, until Marie moved in next door. She showed up with a U-Haul and her daughter. Said her name was Marie Gibson. Late 40s, maybe early 50s. Her daughter, Lexi, seemed about 20-something. They looked tired but polite. Marie came right over and introduced herself. Told me she worked in property management. Whatever that meant. I helped them unload a love seat. Didn't think twice about it. Fast forward about a year. Marie knocks on my door. She's crying. Her mother, Lorraine, fell and broke her hip. She's panicked. Said she needs to move her into assisted living, but has no help. Everyone bailed. Her daughter was in Atlanta for the week. Her boyfriend, she said, was useless. Her eyes were puffy and her voice cracked. I could have said no, but I've been there, watching someone get older and not knowing what to do. I told her I'd help. Took 2 days off work, rented a U-Haul, brought over my moving dolly. We drove across town to her mother's old place. Ranch-style home, built in the 70s, packed to the ceiling with old furniture and boxes. It was rough. Her mom wasn't happy about leaving. We had to pack while she sat on the couch watching us, mostly silent. The whole place smelled like old books and mothballs. Marie cried more than once. Once when she found her dad's military flag in a plastic bin. Once when she saw her mom waving from behind the glass at the facility. I didn't ask questions. I just did the job. When we were done, she hugged me. Told me she didn't know how she would have done it without me. Said I was a lifesaver. A month later, I got a letter from the HOA. It said I was in violation of community rules. Accused of operating an unlicensed moving company from my garage. Cited excessive truck activity and suspicious behavior. Said I had 14 days to respond. I sat there, staring at it, not believing what I was reading. I hadn't done anything but help a neighbor move her mom. For free. No money.
No flyers.
Nothing. I walked out to my driveway and saw Marie watering her front yard. I asked, "Did you say something to the HOA?" She looked up, smiled, and said, I told them you seemed busy lately. You looked like you needed something to do." Then she laughed. I didn't say anything else. Just turned around and went back inside. I walked to my closet, pulled out an old box, and opened a folder I hadn't touched in 6 years. Gibson Property Holdings, internal audit back before I moved here. I worked a case involving a small property company with shady numbers. I wasn't supposed to keep the file, but something about it stuck with me. I always keep backups. Marie Gibson was listed as operations manager for the company. She wasn't charged with anything, but she was tied to several incidents. Misplaced rent checks. Duplicate fees. Tenants who said she demanded cash-only maintenance fees that didn't exist. A few appliances disappeared during turnover. Nothing proven, but she had a pattern. I pulled up the digital files. Screenshots. Emails. Some recorded voicemails that were legally recorded in a 2-party state. I'd collected everything. I spent 2 nights piecing together a timeline from what I had, nothing illegal, just unethical. I printed it out, made copies, and mailed it to 3 addresses. The State Licensing Board for Property Managers, the owner of her current management company, and the HOA board. No name attached. Just a note. You should know who's handling your properties. She wanted to play dirty? Fine. She'd forgotten who I was. Marie didn't come out for 2 days after that. Her car stayed parked. No porch lights. Curtains shut tight. Then, late on a Thursday night, I saw her porch light flick on. I was sitting in my garage, just organizing tools, letting the silence work through me. Her front door opened, and she stepped out fast, like someone looking for a fight. She walked straight to my driveway. "I know what you did," she said, standing 10 feet from me. I didn't move. "Then you know why." Her face was red. "That stuff is old. It's not even real. I've got a lawyer." I cut her off. "You filed a fake complaint against me to the HOA. After I helped you." Her jaw clenched. She looked like she wanted to scream, but couldn't. I didn't think they'd take it seriously. "Then why do it?" She didn't answer. Just stared at me like I was the one who'd crossed a line. Next morning, I got an email from the HOA. They were dropping the complaint after further review. No apology, just a one-line update. But that wasn't the real win. The real win came a week later, when a white sedan with tinted windows parked outside Marie's house. A man in a suit walked up and rang the bell. He held a file under his arm. I recognized the logo on the folder, State Licensing Board. She didn't answer the door. He stood there for a minute, then slid the folder into her mailbox. By the next weekend, Marie's car was gone. I didn't see her for 2 more days. Then Sunday evening, I heard yelling next door. Loud, angry yelling. It was Lexi. She was back in town. I couldn't make out everything, but a few lines stuck out. "You always do this, Mom. I'm not going to lie for you again. This is why we moved here, in the first place." Then the door slammed. Hard. Lexi left that night, suitcase in hand. Didn't say goodbye. Monday morning, a for sale sign went up in Marie's front yard. Just like that. But it wasn't over. Not yet. 2 weeks later, I got a knock on my door. It was a woman I'd never seen before. Blonde, mid-30s, business casual. She introduced herself as Pam, a junior investigator for the property company Marie had worked for before she moved here. "Sorry to bother you," she said, "but I think you might be the one who sent us this." She held up a copy of the file I'd mailed. "We're taking it seriously. Some of this links up with a few open complaints we never closed." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. Just nodded. She thanked me and left. Marie never looked at me again. Not once. She was still living there, barely. I saw her sitting on her back porch some nights, just staring at the trees like she wasn't really seeing anything. But I knew there was still more. Something else was off. And I was right. Because a few days later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single sentence. "She did the same thing in Savannah. Check the name Brenna Galloway." I read the name twice, Brenna Galloway. I didn't recognize it at first, but the handwriting was clean, deliberate. Someone wanted me to look. Someone who didn't want to be known. I fired up my old work laptop. Still had my old tools installed. I started with public records in Savannah. Took me about 20 minutes to find a case from 5 years ago, small claims court. Plaintiff, Brenna Galloway. Defendant, Gibson Property Holdings. Brenna had sued over a missing security deposit. Claimed the management company charged her for damages that were already there when she moved in. She had photos. Lease copies. Texts. The judge ruled in her favor. Ordered Marie's company to pay $1,100. They never did. I dug deeper. Found a news clipping, small blog-style write-up from a local Savannah tenant rights group. Apparently, Brenna wasn't the only one. 3 other tenants had tried to sue over the same thing, but their cases didn't go anywhere. But here's the twist. I found a mortgage deed in Marie's name, dated 4.5 years ago, for a townhouse in Savannah, that she transferred to a man named David Wilcox 6 months later. Now that name I knew. He used to be a property flipper. Got caught up in a rental scam 5 years ago in Georgia. Same time Marie disappeared from Savannah. I kept reading. David Wilcox was listed as property coordinator for Gibson Holdings for a short period, less than a year. Then nothing. I printed everything. Stuck it in a new folder. Labeled it Wilcox Galloway link. That weekend, I saw Marie packing boxes in her garage. She looked thinner. No makeup. Hair pulled back tight. Like the mask had fallen off. I thought about saying something. Asking who David was. Asking why she kept bouncing from town to town. But I didn't. Instead, I drove to Savannah. I tracked down Brenna through a social media account she hadn't posted on in 2 years, but it had a business name tagged, Galloway Pet Services. She ran a mobile grooming business now, out of a little van with paw prints on the side. She met me in a Dunkin' parking lot. I told her who I was. Showed her what I'd found. When I mentioned Marie's name, she went cold, then nodded slowly. She showed up to our place wearing a smile and left with 2 months' rent and my grandmother's old stove. She sold it, you know. Said it was junk. Then turned around and sold it for $300. I gave her the Savannah court documents. Showed her the Wilcox connection. She stared at the papers for a long time. I always thought I was just unlucky. But she's done this to other people? Looks like it. She looked up at me. Let's do something about it. Back home, I found something in the file I hadn't noticed before. One of the tenant complaints mentioned a storage unit rented under Gibson Holdings. Same city. Same address used on one of Marie's old business cards. I called the facility. Told them I was working on a legal matter and asked if the unit was still active. They wouldn't give me anything, privacy rules. But I knew someone who could help. His name was Greg. Used to do security consulting. Now he ran background checks for private investigators. I called in a favor. 3 days later, Greg sent me a photo of the unit's access logs. Marie had visited that storage unit 5 times in the last 2 months. And guess what name the unit was under? Not Marie Gibson. Not David Wilcox. Brenna Galloway. I stared at that name on the storage unit record for a long time. Brenna Galloway. Marie had opened a storage unit in Savannah under the name of the same woman who tried to sue her. Either it was a twisted joke or something worse, identity theft. I didn't know how far Marie had taken it, but it was more than shady. It was criminal. I called Brenna right away. When I told her, she went dead quiet. I never had a storage unit, she said. Not in Savannah. Not anywhere. I gave her the address. She wrote it down. Then she asked, "You think she's using my name to hide stuff?" "I don't know," I said. "But if she is, she's gotten bolder." We made a plan. That Friday, Brenna filed a report with the local sheriff's office in Savannah, claiming potential identity fraud. Since it was her name on the lease, they had to take it seriously. She requested a lock check. The officer called the facility, explained the situation, and they agreed to a voluntary inspection with Brenna present. She asked if I'd come with her. I did. The unit was clean on the outside. Nothing unusual. But when they opened it, boxes. Dozens of them. Labeled by address. Different cities. Charleston, Savannah, Raleigh, Wilmington. Each one full of tenant files, receipts, apartment keys, old check stubs, and several prepaid Visa cards still in their wrappers. Brenna opened one of the folders and pulled out a copy of her lease. Her actual lease, from 5 years ago. Marie hadn't just scammed her. She'd kept records. On everything. Even worse, a few folders had new addresses. Ones Marie hadn't even lived at yet. She was planning her next move. That night, Brenna and I sat in a Waffle House, going through copies of everything. I made scans and backups. She called a lawyer she knew from the animal shelter where she volunteered. We knew we had enough now. Identity theft. Fraud. Misuse of business licenses. Potential tax evasion. But then Brenna said something that froze me. What if she's done this to someone who doesn't even know yet? I hadn't thought of that. We'd both been focused on what she did to us. But maybe there were others. Older folks. Renters who didn't ask questions. Maybe even some who still trusted her. I didn't want to wait for her to skip town again. So I made one more call, to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My old contact in the IRS. I still had the file from the old audit. Now I had 3 more. And I knew exactly where to send them. My contact's name was Ron. We worked together years ago on a tech contractor skimming IRS refunds with fake dependents. Ron was one of the few who didn't care how messy the data looked, as long as it led somewhere real. I didn't sugarcoat it. Her name's Marie Gibson. Used to operate under Gibson Property Holdings. I've got 3 addresses, multiple IDs, and now a fake storage unit under a victim's name. Ron didn't say much at first. Then, you have evidence she crossed state lines?
Yeah.
She's moved money. She's moved herself. That got his attention. He gave me a secure upload link. I sent everything. All the files. Brenna's court docs. The HOA letter. The photos. The copy of her ID on the lease from the storage unit. Everything. Ron called me back the next day.
His tone had changed.
Scott, I don't know what you stumbled into, but you may have just cracked open a case we've had open for 5 years. That stopped me cold. What kind of case? He didn't give details. He couldn't. But he said Marie Gibson, under different aliases, had popped up in 3 different fraud flags: federal housing assistance, small business stimulus misuse, and a nonprofit that was quietly shut down after some creative accounting.
She's a runner, he said.
Starts a project, drains the funds, burns the paper trail, and disappears. But she didn't disappear this time, I said. No, he said, because she thought she was safe. 2 days later, I saw 2 unmarked cars parked across from Marie's house. They didn't move for hours. That night, she came storming to my door. You did this, she hissed. You think you know me? I looked her straight in the face. I know enough. She shook her head. Her voice dropped. You don't understand what you've done. And that's when she said something I still haven't figured out. They're not just going to come for me. You started something. She walked off into the dark. And the next morning, she was gone. No moving truck.
No neighbors helping.
Just gone. But I don't think it's over. Because 2 days after she vanished, I found a plain envelope wedged under my windshield wiper. No return address. Inside was a single photo. A picture of me, taken from behind, sitting at my desk in my garage. And one line, printed in block letters: stop digging. I held the photo in my hands for a long time. I wasn't scared. Not exactly. But I felt it. Something cold and low in my gut. Someone had been close. Close enough to see into my garage. Close enough to know my habits. I checked the camera above my driveway. Nothing. The feed had been wiped just on that one day, just that 1 hour. I'd wired that camera myself. No one should have been able to touch it without leaving a trace. So how? I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the garage with the door down, lights off, just watching the feed from the other cameras. Porch, side gate, alley. Nothing. Then, just before 3 a.m., I saw movement. Back fence. Someone standing just out of the camera's motion range. They were careful, too careful, like they knew where the blind spots were. They didn't move closer. Didn't try anything. Just stood there. Watching. After 30 seconds, they turned and disappeared into the trees behind the property line. The next day, I installed 3 more cameras. Higher angle. Hidden. Then I drove to a contact who owed me a favor. Old surveillance tech from my forensics days. I handed him the photo and asked him to pull anything he could from it: lens type, resolution, timestamp, shadow. Anything. He looked at it for a few minutes, then pointed to a tiny reflection in the window of the shed behind me in the picture. You see that? He said. That's a phone. Cheap model. But the reflections flipped. Whoever took this was standing on your property. He looked up. Inside your fence. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about Marie anymore. This was bigger. And someone else wanted it buried. I called Ron again. Told him what had happened. The photo. The warning. The person watching. He went quiet. Too quiet. Then he said, Scott, I need to tell you something off the record. Go ahead. That nonprofit I mentioned? The one Marie drained? It was a front. No one's supposed to know that. It was part of a pilot grant program tied to a federal contractor. Low-income housing development in 3 states. Someone forged payout records. Someone with access. We lost $400,000 before anyone caught on. I didn't say anything. Ron continued. If she has files on you, it means you're in one of her contingency folders. Contingency for what? In case she had to run. I sat back, feeling it settle. That photo of me, that wasn't a warning. That was a message to her. She wasn't just covering her tracks. She was setting someone else up to take the fall if things went south. And the person she picked was me. I didn't leave the house for 2 days after that. Not because I was scared, I was thinking. Every move I made now had to be smart. If Marie was setting me up as her fall guy, there was no telling how far she'd gone. I started checking everything, my bank statements, credit history, property records, looking for anything unusual. On the second night, I found it. A new business license filed under my name. Charleston County. Scott's Home Solutions, LLC. Filed 2 weeks ago. I never applied for that. The address listed? My home address. The business type? Residential logistics and tenant relocation. I stared at the words for a long time. Tenant relocation. She wasn't subtle. She wanted it to look like I'd been running the moving scam. That I'd been the one operating a fake business out of my garage. Using U-Hauls. Accepting cash. Probably even losing client deposits. It was all lining up, the HOA complaint, the garage photo, now the fake license. She was drawing a map, and I was the destination. I called a lawyer, one I trusted. I told him everything. He didn't say I was paranoid. He didn't laugh. Instead, he said, "You need to go to the FBI. Not the local cops. Not the state. Go federal." So I did. I met with a field agent. Gave them the whole timeline. From the HOA letter to the storage unit. The new business license. The photo. The files I'd given Ron. Everything. I even brought a flash drive. They asked for 48 hours to review. I went home. Waited. Next day, I got a call. Not from the FBI, from Ron. He said, "Scott, I need you to listen very carefully." Okay. They ran your name through the system. There's a warrant. Issued out of Alabama. Fraud, impersonation, and conspiracy to misappropriate federal housing funds.
What?
I could barely breathe. They used your new business name. Claimed you applied for a grant. There's a digital trail. I didn't apply for anything. I know that, he said. But they don't. Not yet. I sat down. My hands were shaking. Ron continued. You need a paper trail.
Now.
Anything that proves you didn't touch those documents. You need to dig, Scott. You used to be good at this. Used to be. I pulled out every device I'd used in the past 6 months. Every hard drive. Every cloud backup. If she forged anything using my identity, she'd have to plant it somewhere. Or better, leave behind a mistake. I found it on an old shared PDF cache. A signature block, copied and pasted. My name. But the signature? Was the same exact pixel pattern as the one I used on my taxes 3 years ago. Same scan. Same tilt. Same edge crop. She hadn't forged my name. She'd reused it. I had proof. And just like that, the game changed again. I printed the pixel analysis. Brought it straight to my lawyer. He took one look and said, "This might be the only thing standing between you and a federal charge." That's how close it had gotten. We sent everything to the FBI. The pixel breakdown, the metadata showing it hadn't originated on my devices, and a time-stamped backup from 3 years ago proving it had been lifted from an old tax return. It held.
For now.
They paused the investigation into me and reopened the one into her. But here's the thing. She was still gone.
No sightings.
No digital trail. Not even a license plate ping. Then one morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from a blocked number. Voicemail. Her voice. "You win, Scott." Or maybe we both lose. Either way, this doesn't end how you think it does. That's all she said. Not a threat. Not even a warning. Just a loose end. A week later, a manila envelope showed up in my mailbox.
No stamp.
No address. Inside were 7 copies of driver's licenses. All with Marie's photo, all with different names. And one with mine. It looked real. down to the microprint. Underneath it was a note. You're not the first. I gave it all to the FBI. Again. But part of me knew I'd only scratched the surface. She'd been running this game longer than I'd realized. Maybe longer than anyone had. They think she's in Mexico now. Or maybe Arizona. Could be anywhere. My name's been cleared, but not my life. I still watch the tree line at night. Still scan every car that slows in front of my house. Because people like Marie don't disappear. They reset. And if she ever needs a new name again, I already know which one she'll use. Sometimes I catch myself checking the mailbox twice, like I'm waiting for something else she left behind. A file, a threat, maybe just a reminder that she's still out there. I don't tell anyone this part, but the worst thing she took wasn't my name or my safety. It was the part of me that used to believe helping someone meant something. Now I watch people a little longer before I open the door. I wait to see who they really are.